On November 23rd, 2025, my son stood on my doorstep with 8 suitcases and said, "Mom, we're moving in. You have plenty of room now." I'm Angela Sterling. I'm 63 years old. I looked at him, this man I hadn't seen in 18 years, and I said, "Okay." Then I decided to teach them all a lesson they'd never forget. But let me start at the beginning, because you need to understand what brought me to that moment. My name is Angela Marie Sterling, and I've been called a lot of things in my life. Gardener, widow, businesswoman, pushover. Only one of those is true anymore. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. This story, it changed everything. 18 years before, the day my husband Marcus died, I was 45 years old and holding a phone that wouldn't stop ringing. November 15th, 2007. The date is burned into my memory like a brand. "Mrs. Sterling?" The voice on the other end was young, shaking. "There's been an accident at the Riverside project. You need to come now." Marcus Sterling, my husband of 23 years, had fallen from scaffolding on a construction site. My construction site. Sterling Gardens and Design had just won the contract to landscape the new Riverside Shopping Center, our biggest job yet. Marcus was supervising the installation of a retaining wall when the scaffolding collapsed. He died before the ambulance arrived. I was in the hospital waiting room when Brian, my 23-year-old son, walked in with his girlfriend, Vanessa Reynolds. I'll never forget what she whispered to him, loud enough for me to hear. "See? I told you she'd sacrifice anything for that business, even your father." Brian looked at me with eyes full of grief and something else. Blame. At the funeral, I tried to hold my son's hand. He pulled away. Vanessa stood between us like a wall, her arm around his waist, her perfectly manicured hand resting possessively on his shoulder. "I think it's best if Brian and I take some space," she told me at the cemetery, her voice sweet as poisoned honey. "This is too traumatic. Being around you, around the business that killed his father, it's not healthy." "Vanessa, please," I said. "He's my son." "And he was my father," Brian said. His voice cracked. "How can you even think about going back to work? How can you—" "Baby, I have to," I tried to explain. "We have employees. We have contracts. Your father would want—" "Don't you dare tell me what Dad would want," Brian shouted. People turned to stare. "You know what Dad would want. He'd want to still be alive. But you pushed him to take that job. You always pushed for bigger, better, more. And now he's gone." That was the last real conversation I had with my son for 18 years. He married Vanessa 6 months later. I wasn't invited. November 2025, I stood on the balcony of my new house at 1847 Lakeshore Drive, Lake Forest, Illinois, watching the sunset paint the water gold and pink. The house was a Mediterranean-style mansion with 6 bedrooms, a professional kitchen, and a view that made visitors gasp. I'd bought it 3 months ago for $2.8 million, paid in cash. The real estate agent, a pleasant white woman named Christine who couldn't hide her surprise when I showed up to the viewing, had asked me what I did for a living. "I used to run a landscaping company," I'd told her. "Oh," she'd said, her smile tightening just a fraction. "That must have been successful." What I didn't tell her, I'd sold Sterling Gardens and Design in 2019 for $11.8 million to a national landscaping conglomerate. What I didn't tell her, the lawsuit against the construction company that built the faulty scaffolding that killed my husband had settled in 2023 for an additional $3.2 million after 16 years of legal battles. What I didn't tell her, I was worth $15 million, and I was tired of being invisible. I'd spent the years after Marcus died working. 16-hour days, weekends, holidays. I poured my grief into the soil, and somehow, it grew into an empire. Sterling Gardens went from a small operation with 12 employees to a company with contracts in 6 states. But I'd done it alone. My best friend Dorothy Washington, my former accountant and the only person who knew the full story, told me I was crazy to buy such a big house. "Girl, what are you going to do with 6 bedrooms?" she'd asked over coffee last month. "You going to start a boarding house?" "I'm going to fill it with life," I'd told her. "With family, with the future I should have had." Dorothy had given me that look, the one that said she loved me but thought I was delusional. "Angela, honey, Brian hasn't called you in 18 years. He didn't even send a card when you had that health scare last year. You need to accept— I know, I'd cut her off. I know what I need to accept. But a woman can hope, can't she? That was 3 weeks ago. Now, standing on my balcony on November 23rd, 2025, I heard the doorbell ring. I set down my coffee, a special Ethiopian blend I'd developed a taste for, and walked through the house. My footsteps echoed on the marble floors. The late afternoon sun streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows. I pulled open the heavy oak door. Time stopped. Brian stood there, and for a moment all I saw was the boy he used to be. The 8-year-old who'd helped me plant my first garden. The teenager who'd mowed lawns with his father on weekends. The young man who'd told me he wanted to be just like us when he grew up. But that boy was gone. The man in front of me was 41 years old, dressed in an expensive suit that had seen better days. His face was drawn, with dark circles under his eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. He'd gained weight around his middle and lost something vital in his eyes. Next to him stood Vanessa Reynolds. Now Vanessa Sterling Reynolds, I supposed, though Brian had taken her last name, which should have told me everything I needed to know. She looked exactly the same as 18 years ago. Blonde hair, perfectly styled. Designer dress. A cream-colored sheath that probably cost $800. Heels that added 4 inches to her 5'6" frame. She was beautiful in that sharp, cold way that some women are. Like a knife polished to a shine. But it was the girl behind them who broke my heart. She was 16, maybe 17, with skin the color of warm honey and hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. She wore jeans and a thin jacket, and she was shivering even though it was 50 degrees outside. Her eyes, brown, like Brian's, like mine, like Marcus's, were enormous in her thin face. 8 suitcases surrounded them, not overnight bags. Suitcases, the kind you pack when you're not coming back. "Mom?" Brian said. His voice was different than I remembered, smaller. "We need to talk." I stood there, my hand on the door, looking at the 3 of them. 18 years of silence. 18 years of birthdays and Christmases and ordinary Tuesdays without my son. 18 years of wondering what I'd done to deserve being erased from his life. And now here he was, with suitcases. Vanessa stepped forward, and I'll give her credit. She was good. Her eyes welled up with tears. She reached for my hands. "Angela," she said, her voice trembling just right. "I'm so sorry. We were so wrong. We were young and stupid, and we blamed you for something that wasn't your fault. Brian has been sick, literally sick, with guilt. We should have been there for you. We should have—" She broke off, wiping her eyes with fingers that still wore a 4-carat diamond ring. I looked at Brian. He couldn't meet my eyes. "We need help, Ma," he said quietly. "And Jazz," he gestured to the girl. "She needs her grandmother. We all need family right now. Jazz, my granddaughter. The child I'd only seen in photographs that Dorothy had found on social media. The baby whose birth I'd learned about 3 weeks after it happened, through a mutual acquaintance. The little girl whose first steps, first words, first day of school I'd missed. She was looking at me with something I recognized. Fear, not fear of me. Fear of what would happen if I said no. I should have slammed the door in their faces. I should have called the police. I should have protected myself the way I'd learned to protect myself over 18 years of loneliness. Instead, I heard myself say, "Come in." I watched them drag those 8 suitcases into my foyer. Brian was breathing heavily by the time he got the last one inside. Vanessa didn't help him. She was too busy evaluating my house. "Wow," she said, running her hand along the marble countertop in the entryway. "This is impressive, Angela. Really, when did you buy this place?" 3 months ago, I said. "Must have cost a fortune," she said lightly. "Lake Forest real estate is insane right now. What, 2 million? 2.5? 2.8, I said. "Would you like some water? Coffee? I can make tea." "Water would be great," Brian said. He was looking around like he'd walked into a museum. "Ma, this place it's really something." I led them to the kitchen, a chef's dream with professional-grade appliances and a huge island made of butcher block. I'd had it designed specifically for the dinner parties I'd imagined hosting. Family dinners, Thanksgiving meals. The kind of gatherings I'd dreamed about during all those lonely years. I poured water from the filtered pitcher into crystal glasses. Waterford, $150 each, a gift to myself when the sale went through. Jazz took her glass with both hands and drank like she hadn't had water in days. "Slow down, baby," Vanessa said, but her tone wasn't motherly. It was sharp, irritated. I watched the interaction carefully. Jazz flinched at Vanessa's voice. "So," I said, sitting down at the island across from them. "What's going on? You said you needed help." Brian and Vanessa exchanged a look. "It's complicated," Brian started. "We've had some financial setbacks," Vanessa cut in. "The economy, you know. Brian's business. It didn't work out the way we hoped. And with Jazz starting to look at colleges, good schools are so expensive, Angela. We just thought maybe family should help family." I nodded slowly. "What kind of business were you in, Brian?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Investments. Cryptocurrency, mostly. I thought I had a system, but the market crashed," Vanessa finished. "We lost everything. The house, the cars, the savings, everything." "I'm sorry to hear that," I said. And I meant it. Whatever my son had done to me, I didn't want him to suffer. But something was wrong. Something in the way Vanessa's eyes kept darting around the kitchen, calculating. Something in the way Brian couldn't look at me. Something in the way Jazz sat perfectly still, like a rabbit trying not to attract a predator's attention. "How much do you need?" I asked directly. Another look between them. "We were actually hoping," Vanessa said, "that maybe we could stay here for a little while. Just until we get back on our feet. You have so much space, and it would give us time to figure things out without the pressure of rent. And it would give me a chance to get to know my granddaughter," Brian added quickly. "To make up for lost time. To be a family again." There it was. The hook. The emotional appeal I'd been waiting 18 years to hear. I looked at Jazz. She was staring at the countertop, her jaw clenched. "Okay," I said. Vanessa's face lit up. "Really? Oh, Angela, thank you so much. We'll be perfect house guests, I promise. We won't get in your way at all. In fact, maybe we can help you manage this place. It must be exhausting keeping up with such a big house at your age." At my age, I was 63, not 90. "I manage fine," I said. "But you're welcome to stay. Temporarily. Let's say 1 week. That should give you time to figure out your next steps." 1 week? Vanessa's smile tightened. "I mean, that's generous, but finding a place, getting jobs, all of that takes time." 1 week, I repeated firmly. "We can reassess after that." I stood up. "I'll show you to your rooms. Brian, you and Vanessa can take the guest suite at the end of the east hallway. Jazz, there's a bedroom upstairs with its own bathroom. I think you'll like it. It has a window seat overlooking the lake." As we walked through the house, Vanessa kept up a running commentary. "Is this real marble? Oh my God, is that an original Romary Bearden? Angela, you have exquisite taste. Who's your decorator?" "I decorated it myself," I said. We reached the guest suite, a spacious room with a king bed, sitting area, and an ensuite bathroom with a soaking tub. "This is perfect," Vanessa said, but she was already looking at the door across the hall. "What's in there?" "That's my office. It's private." Of course," she said quickly. "We respect your privacy completely." I showed Jazz to her room next. When Vanessa and Brian stayed in the hallway, I walked the girl inside and closed the door. "Jazz," I said softly, "are you okay?" She looked at me with those big brown eyes, and I saw tears forming. "I wanted to meet you so badly," she whispered. "I used to look at your picture, the one from Dad's wallet that he doesn't know I found. I wanted to know my grandmother." "I wanted to know you too, baby," I said. My voice cracked. "Why didn't you reach out? You're old enough—" "Mom, Vanessa checks my phone," she said quickly. "She checks everything. If she knew I'd tried to contact you, she'd—" She stopped abruptly. "She'd what?" Jazz shook her head. "Nothing. Never mind. I'm just tired." But I'd seen the fear flash across her face again. "You're safe here," I told her. "Whatever's happening, you're safe now." She nodded, but I could tell she didn't believe me. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I sat in my office with my laptop, watching the security camera feeds I'd had installed when I bought the house. A woman living alone in a big house in a wealthy neighborhood? Security cameras weren't suspicious. They were practical. What Vanessa and Brian didn't know, I had cameras in every common area of the house. Living room, kitchen, hallways. Not the bedrooms or bathrooms. I wasn't a monster. But everywhere else. At 11:47 p.m., I watched Vanessa and Brian emerge from their room. The audio was crystal clear. "She's loaded," Vanessa whispered as they crept into the kitchen. "Did you see this place? The art alone is probably worth $500,000. And she said she paid $2.8 million cash. Cash, Brian." "Van, I don't know if I can do this," Brian said. He was crying softly. "She's my mother. She let us in. She's being kind." "Kind?" Vanessa's voice was sharp. "She's being stupid. She thinks you're here for some tearful reunion. She has no idea what's at stake." "But maybe we should just ask her for help," Brian said. "Maybe if I explained about Henderson." "And tell her what?" Vanessa snapped. "That you lost $425,000 of other people's money? That you're going to be charged with fraud if we don't pay it back by December 15th? That we have 3 weeks to come up with nearly $500,000 or you go to prison?" My blood ran cold. "She might help," Brian said weakly. "She might," Vanessa agreed. "Or she might turn you in herself." "No, we do this my way. She's old, Brian. She's alone. She's vulnerable. We establish that she needs help managing her affairs. We get power of attorney. We liquidate what we can before she knows what's happening. We get the money, pay Henderson, and get out." "That's fraud, Van. That's survival," Vanessa said. "And we're running out of time. I already called Rick Morrison. He'll have the papers ready by Monday. We just need to convince her to sign them." "She's not stupid," Brian said. "No," Vanessa agreed. "But she's desperate. 18 years without her son? She'll sign anything to keep you here. Trust me." They stood there in my kitchen, in the house I'd welcomed them into, planning to rob me. And Brian, my son, he was going to let it happen. I watched them go back to their room. Then I pulled out my phone and called the one person I knew would be awake. "Dorothy," I said when she answered. "I need your help, and I need you to get here first thing in the morning." "Angela? It's midnight. What's wrong?" "Everything," they said. "And I need to fix it before it's too late." At 3:17 a.m., I heard a soft knock on my bedroom door. I opened it to find Jazz standing there in an oversized t-shirt, tears streaming down her face. "Grandma," she whispered. "Can we talk? Please?" I pulled her inside and sat her down on the edge of my bed. "What's wrong, baby?" "You have to be careful," she said in a rush. "Mom, Vanessa, she's not who you think she is. She's not even who Dad thinks she is." "Tell me everything," I said. And she did. Jazz told me that Vanessa wasn't her biological mother. Her real mother, Keisha Johnson, had died of cancer when Jazz was 2 years old. Brian had married Vanessa when Jazz was 4. She told me that Vanessa was nice to her in public, but cruel in private. Nothing physical. Vanessa was too smart for that. But the emotional abuse was constant. "You're just like your ghetto mother." "Thank God you got some of Brian's good genes. If you weren't here, our lives would be so much easier." She told me she'd heard Vanessa on the phone talking about pills and making her sign things when she's confused. "Grandma, I think she wants to hurt you," Jazz said. "Not like kill you, but mess with your head. Make you think you're sick or confused so you'll give them money." "Why are you telling me this?" I asked gently. "These are your parents." "Vanessa's not my parent," Jazz said fiercely. "She's a liar. And Dad's too weak to stop her. He's scared of going to jail. I heard them talking about someone named Henderson and money they owe. Grandma, I don't know what's happening, but I know it's bad. And I know that if you help them, they're just going to take everything and leave. And they're going to take me with them." She broke down sobbing. "Please don't let them take me back. Please, I'll do anything. I'll get a job. I'll go to school. I won't be any trouble. Just please don't make me go with them." I held my granddaughter while she cried, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to kick them out. I was going to play their game, and I was going to win. "Jazz," I said quietly, "I need you to be brave. Can you do that?" She nodded against my shoulder. "I need you to go back to your room and act like everything is normal. Don't tell them we talked. Don't act suspicious. Just be the quiet, scared girl they expect you to be. Can you do that?" "Why?" "Because I'm going to fix this," I said. "But I need time, and I need you to trust me." She pulled back and looked at me with those eyes that reminded me so much of Marcus. "What are you going to do?" I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. I'm going to show them that underestimating an old woman is the biggest mistake they'll ever make. Dorothy arrived at 7 a.m. sharp, as I knew she would. I met her at the side door before anyone else woke up. "Girl, you look terrible," she said, pulling me into a hug. "What happened?" I told her everything. The cameras, the conversation, Jazz's warning. Dorothy listened, her expression darkening with every word. "So what do you want me to do?" she asked. "I need you to call Patricia Valdez," I said. "Tell her it's urgent. Tell her I need a full background check on Brian Sterling Reynolds and Vanessa Reynolds Sterling. Everything. Criminal records, financial history, aliases, all of it. And I need it by Monday." "Monday's in 2 days, Angela." "Patricia owes me a favor," I said. "I represented her mother pro bono in a housing dispute 3 years ago. She'll do it." "What else?" "I need you to help me set a trap," I said. "But first, I need to set the bait." I walked to my desk and pulled out a bank statement. Not my real one. I'd had Dorothy create a fake one weeks ago, just in case I ever needed to hide my assets from someone. This statement showed checking account, $47,329. Savings account, $89,667. Investment account, $2,847,920. Total visible assets, $2,984,916. What it didn't show, the offshore account with $8.6 million, the trust fund I'd set up for any future grandchildren, the property I owned in 3 different states. "Leave this on the kitchen counter," I told Dorothy. "Make it look accidental." "You're using yourself as bait," Dorothy said. "I'm using their greed as bait," I corrected. "There's a difference." Dorothy shook her head. "Angela, you're playing with fire." "No," I said, thinking of Jazz's terrified face, thinking of 18 years of loneliness, thinking of my son choosing a con artist over his own mother. "I'm fighting fire with fire. And trust me, Dorothy, I've spent my whole life in the garden. I know exactly how to handle weeds." "What happens when they find this statement?" "They're going to think they've hit the jackpot," I said. "They're going to think I'm worth $3 million, and they're going to get sloppy. Greedy people always do." "And then?" "And then," I said, "we show them what happens when you try to steal from Angela Marie Sterling." Dorothy looked at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, a sharp, fierce smile that reminded me why we'd been best friends for 40 years. "Lord have mercy," she said. "They have no idea what's coming." "No," I agreed. "They really don't." Sunday morning, November 24th, 2025. I made breakfast. Not a simple breakfast, a production. Pancakes, bacon, fresh squeezed orange juice, fruit salad with berries that cost $18 a pint. I set the table with my good china, the Wedgwood set I'd bought myself for Christmas 3 years ago. When Vanessa came down at 9:17 a.m., she stopped in the doorway of the kitchen. "Angela," she said, her hand flying to her chest, "you didn't have to do all this." "I wanted to," I said, plating pancakes. "It's been so long since I've cooked for family." Brian appeared behind her, Jazz trailing silently after him. They all sat down. I watched Vanessa's eyes go immediately to the counter where Dorothy had accidentally left the bank statement. She saw it. I caught the flicker of her gaze, the way her pupils dilated slightly. "This is delicious, Ma," Brian said, and he actually meant it. He was eating like he hadn't had a home-cooked meal in months. Maybe he hadn't. "So," I said, sitting down with my coffee, "tell me about yourselves. What have you been doing for the past 18 years? It was a reasonable question, a mother's question. But I watched their faces carefully. Vanessa jumped in before Brian could speak. "Brian's been in investment management," she said smoothly. "Very successful until the recent market volatility. And I've been focused on raising Jazz and supporting Brian's career." "Investment management," I repeated. "That sounds impressive. What firm?" "Independent," Brian said quickly. "I managed private portfolios for select clients." "Cryptocurrency?" I asked innocently. He flinched. "Among other things." "I don't understand much about that world," I said, letting my voice sound older, uncertain. "All those computers and digital money. It's so confusing at my age." I saw Vanessa's eyes light up. There it was, the moment she decided I was vulnerable. "It is confusing," she agreed sympathetically. "Even for people who work in finance. That's actually something I wanted to talk to you about, Angela. With a house like this, and I'm assuming some investments, do you have someone helping you manage everything? A financial advisor? A lawyer? I have a lawyer, I said. Patricia Valdez. She handled the sale of my business. Just one lawyer? Vanessa's concern sounded so genuine. Angela, with assets like yours, you really should have a whole team. Financial planner, estate attorney, maybe even someone to help with day-to-day management. It can be overwhelming, especially as we get older and things get harder to keep track of. I manage, I said, letting a note of defensiveness creep into my voice. Of course you do, she soothed. But maybe we could help. Brian's experience with financial management, even though his business didn't work out, he still has the knowledge. We could look at your accounts together, make sure everything is optimized, make sure you're protected. Protected? From what? From them? That's very kind, I said slowly. But I've been handling my own finances for 40 years. And you've done an amazing job, Brian added. This house alone proves that. But Ma, you don't have to do everything alone anymore. That's why we're here. To help. To be family. I let the silence stretch. I let them see me considering it. Let me think about it, I said finally. Vanessa's smile was triumphant. She thought she was winning. After breakfast, I watched from my office window as Vanessa walked to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. She pulled out her phone and made a call. My security system included audio on the front cameras. I turned up the volume. Rick, it's Vanessa. We're in... Yes, the mother-in-law. She's perfect. Old, alone, clearly not managing well. I saw her bank statement this morning. $2.8 million in liquid assets, and that's just what I saw on one page. I need those papers by Monday. Power of attorney, healthcare proxy, the works. Make it look standard, like estate planning. No, she won't suspect. She's desperate for family. She'll sign anything. I recorded every word. Patricia Valdez arrived at my office at 2 p.m. sharp. She was 45 years old, sharp as a tack, and she didn't smile when she sat down across from my desk. Dorothy was already there, sitting in the leather chair by the window. Angela, Patricia said, laying a manila folder on my desk. You're not going to like this. Tell me, I said. Patricia opened the folder. Let's start with Vanessa Reynolds, except that's not her real name. She slid a birth certificate across the desk. Name, Victoria Ann Castellano. Born March 15, 1987, New York, New York. Parents, Frank Joseph Castellano and Maria Elena Castellano. Castellano, I repeated. Why does that sound familiar? Because Frank Castellano owns Castellano Imports, Patricia said. High-end furniture and home goods. Net worth around $47 million. Victoria Vanessa is his only daughter. So she comes from money, I said. Why is she trying to steal from me? Because she doesn't have access to it anymore, Patricia said grimly. She pulled out another document, a criminal complaint from the state of New York. Case number 2015-CR-008764. Defendant, Victoria Ann Castellano. Charges, embezzlement, wire fraud. Amount, $287,450. She was 28 years old, Patricia explained, working as the bookkeeper for her father's company. Over 18 months, she systematically stole from the business. Small amounts at first, $3,000 here, $5,000 there. Then she got bolder, $15,000, $30,000, $47,000 in a single transfer. What happened? Dorothy asked. Frank Castellano discovered it during a routine audit. He confronted her. She confessed and begged him not to press charges. He did anyway. Her own father? I said. Her own father, Patricia confirmed. The case went to trial. Victoria, Vanessa, represented herself as the victim. She claimed she'd been financially abused, that her father had never paid her fairly, that she deserved that money. The jury didn't buy it. She slid another paper across. She was convicted on 4 counts of fraud, sentenced to 3 years, served 18 months at Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for Women, released in August 2017. I stared at the mugshot. Vanessa's face, younger but recognizable, staring into a camera with dead eyes. She met Brian in January 2018, Patricia continued. 6 months after her release. He was working as a financial advisor at a small firm in Chicago. She told him her family was racist, that they'd disowned her for dating black men, that she'd been trying to build a new life. He believed her. And they got married, I said quietly. June 23rd, 2018, Patricia confirmed. At a courthouse. No family present. She legally changed her name to Vanessa Reynolds and buried Victoria Castellano. Until now, Dorothy said. Until now, Patricia agreed. There's more. She pulled out a thick stack of papers. Brian Sterling Reynolds, your son. My heart clenched. Between 2019 and 2023, Brian worked as an independent investment advisor. He specialized in cryptocurrency investments, promising clients returns of 15 to 20% annually. He attracted investors primarily from Chicago's black professional community, doctors, lawyers, small business owners, people who trusted him because he was one of them. She showed me a list of names, 15 names. Total investments, $1,847,000. By November 2023, all of it was gone. Brian had been gambling with their money, not in crypto markets, in casinos, online poker, sports betting. He lost $643,000 gambling. The rest went to maintaining a lifestyle he couldn't afford. $4,800 a month apartment, $89,000 BMW, vacations to Dubai and the Maldives. I felt sick. One of the investors was Thomas Henderson, Patricia said. He's a venture capitalist, successful black businessman, very connected in Chicago. He'd invested $425,000, his retirement fund. When Brian couldn't return it, Henderson bought out the other investors' claims. Now Brian owes Henderson $425,000, plus interest. Total debt, $512,750 as of today. And if he doesn't pay? I asked. Henderson filed fraud charges. There's a warrant for Brian's arrest in Cook County. Henderson agreed to delay execution of the warrant until December 15th, 2025. If Brian doesn't pay by then, he goes to jail. Federal charges. Wire fraud. He's looking at 5 to 10 years. December 15th, 3 weeks away. So they came here, I said, because they're desperate. They came here, Patricia corrected, because Vanessa has done this before. She identifies vulnerable targets, wealthy, isolated people, and she manipulates them into signing over assets. She's done it at least twice before that we can document. An elderly widow in Evanston in 2019 got her to sign over $75,000 before the woman's daughter intervened. A retired professor in Oak Park in 2021 walked away with $34,000 before someone reported her. Why isn't she in jail? Dorothy demanded. The victims were too embarrassed to press charges, Patricia said. They felt stupid for being conned. One settled privately. The other just wanted her gone. She looked at me directly. Angela, she's a predator. She's counting on you being lonely, desperate for family, and easy to manipulate. And Brian? I'm sorry, but your son is either her accomplice or her victim. I can't tell which. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. My son was a criminal. My daughter-in-law was a con artist. And my granddaughter was trapped in the middle of it all. What do you recommend? I asked. Call the police right now, Patricia said. Show them the evidence. Get a restraining order. Protect yourself. I shook my head. If I do that, Jazz gets caught in the crossfire. She goes into foster care or back with them. No. Angela, no, I said firmly. I'm going to handle this my way, but I need you to do something for me. What? Contact Thomas Henderson. Arrange a meeting. I want to talk to him. Patricia looked skeptical. Why? Because, I said, if I'm going to save my son, I need to understand exactly what I'm saving him from. That night I found the pills. I was in my master bathroom at 9:30 p.m. when I noticed the medicine cabinet was slightly ajar. I always kept it closed. Always. I opened it fully. There on the second shelf was a prescription bottle I'd never seen before. Patient name, Angela M. Sterling. Medication, alprazolam, 2 milligrams. Prescriber, Dr. Richard Morrison. Date, November 23, 2025. Instructions, take 1 tablet at bedtime for anxiety and sleep. I didn't have anxiety. I slept fine, and I'd never heard of Dr. Richard Morrison. I took the bottle to my office and called Patricia. I need you to check something, I said. Is there a Dr. Richard Morrison licensed to practice in Illinois? She called back in 10 minutes. Yes, Richard T. Morrison, licensed psychiatrist. But Angela, his office is in Vanessa's phone records. She called him 4 times last week. Can you get the pills tested? I know someone, she said. A forensic pharmacist. Drop them off tomorrow morning. Dorothy picked up the test results Wednesday afternoon. She came to my office, her face grim. It's not just alprazolam, she said. There's something else in there. The pharmacist said it's a combination of alprazolam and a drug called diphenhydramine, Benadryl basically, but in doses high enough to cause genuine cognitive impairment. Meaning? Meaning if you took these pills for a week or 2, you'd actually start experiencing memory problems, confusion, disorientation. And if she had you taking them long enough, you'd seem genuinely incompetent. Medical records would back it up. She's not just trying to steal from me, I said slowly. She's trying to make me incompetent so I can't fight back. Exactly, Dorothy said. And if you took these pills in front of witnesses, say at a lawyer's office or when signing documents, they'd testify you seemed confused and weak. She'd have proof. I looked at the bottle in my hand. Keep these, I said, handing them to Dorothy. Lock them in your safe. We're going to need them. That night at dinner, Vanessa brought me a cup of tea. I made it special, she said with a warm smile. Chamomile with honey. My grandmother used to make it for me when I couldn't sleep. I thought you might enjoy it. I took the cup. I smiled at her. That's so thoughtful, Vanessa. Thank you. I waited until she turned away. Then I poured the tea into the potted plant next to my chair when she wasn't looking. The plant was fake. Plastic. She'd never know. But I would. And I was keeping score. Thanksgiving morning. Exactly 1 week since they'd arrived. I cooked. Turkey with sage stuffing. Sweet potatoes with brown sugar and pecans. Green beans with almonds. Cornbread. Pecan pie. I set the table with my finest linens. I lit candles. I made it look like the family Thanksgiving I'd dreamed of for 18 years. Vanessa was helping in the kitchen, playing the dutiful daughter-in-law. But every chance she got, she was steering the conversation. Angela, have you thought more about what we discussed? About letting Brian help with your finances? I've been thinking about it, I said, basting the turkey. Because we found something concerning, she said carefully. In your office. I wasn't snooping, I swear, I was just looking for a pen. And I saw some papers. Old bills that haven't been paid. A notice from the IRS about a tax filing. Angela, are you keeping up with everything okay? I hadn't left any unpaid bills. She was lying, testing to see if I'd catch her. Oh, I said, letting my voice waver. I thought I'd paid those. Maybe I forgot. Things slip my mind sometimes. I saw her exchange a glance with Brian. That's what we're worried about, Brian said gently. Ma, there's no shame in needing help. Maybe we should sit down with your lawyer and make sure everything is in order. Rick Morrison is excellent, Vanessa added. He's helped lots of seniors with estate planning and asset protection. Very reasonable fees. He could come by tomorrow, just to review everything. Tomorrow, Friday. They were accelerating the timeline. Maybe, I said. Let me think about it. But I'd already made my decision. It was time to confront my son. I waited until Vanessa left for a hair appointment at 2 p.m. Jazz was at the library. I'd given her money and told her to stay there until 5. Brian was alone in the house with me. I found him in the living room, staring out at the lake. Brian, I said, we need to talk, just us. He turned, and for a moment I saw fear flash across his face. Ma, if this is about Vanessa's idea, it's not, I said. Sit down, baby, please. He sat. I sat across from him, close enough to see the dark circles under his eyes, the tremor in his hands. I know about Henderson, I said quietly, all the color drained from his face. I know about the $425,000. I know about the fraud charges. I know you're facing prison if you don't pay by December 15th. I know everything, Brian. He opened his mouth, closed it. Then he started to cry. Not quiet tears, loud gasping sobs that shook his whole body. Ma, I'm sorry. I'm so fucking sorry. I didn't mean... I thought I could fix it. I thought I could win it back. I thought, why didn't you come to me? I asked. When it started going wrong, why didn't you call me? Because I was ashamed, he shouted. Because I'm 41 years old and I'm a failure. Because every decision I've ever made has been wrong. Because... His voice broke. Because I blamed you for Dad's death and I was wrong and I didn't know how to take it back. There it was. 18 years of pain in one sentence. Brian, I said softly, do you want to know the truth about your father's death? He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. I walked to my office and came back with a folder. Patricia had pulled it for me years ago, but I'd never shared it. Your father died on November 15th, 2007, I said. The scaffolding collapsed, but it wasn't my fault, and it wasn't his fault. I showed him the investigation report. The concrete supplier, Riverside Materials, sold us defective rebar. They falsified the safety certificates. They knew the materials were substandard, and they sold them anyway because it was cheaper. I showed him more documents. I hired certified engineers. I used the exact specifications required by law. I did everything right, Brian. Your father died because someone else chose profit over safety. I showed him the final document, the criminal conviction. Riverside Materials was found guilty of negligent homicide. They went bankrupt. Their CEO served 3 years in federal prison. I showed him the settlement letter. The $3.2 million I got, that came from their insurance company after they were criminally convicted. I fought for 16 years to get justice for your father. 16 years, Brian, while you thought I'd killed him. Brian was shaking. Why didn't you tell me? Because you were 23 years old and grieving, and then you were gone. I tried to reach out, Brian. For the first 5 years, I called, I wrote letters, I sent birthday cards. You returned them all unopened. Eventually, I stopped trying. I sat down next to him. I worked those hours after your father died because we were broke, baby. His death left us with nothing. No insurance, no savings, crushing debt. I worked 70-hour weeks to keep you in school, to keep the house, to keep us alive. I built Sterling Gardens from nothing because I had to, not because I wanted to, because we had no choice. I showed him old ledgers. This? Your college tuition at Northwestern, $47,000. I sold my mother's house to pay for it. This? Your apartment in your 20s. I co-signed because you had no credit. This? Your wedding to Vanessa. $30,000 I gave you as a gift. Brian was sobbing. I didn't know. Ma, I didn't know any of this. Vanessa said, she said you were rich, that you'd always been rich, that you just didn't want to share. Vanessa has been lying to you, I said gently, about a lot of things. I handed him Patricia's folder. He read in silence. Every page his face grew paler. When he finished, he looked at me with devastated eyes. Her real name is Victoria? Yes. She went to prison? Yes. She's been conning people? Yes, baby. And now she's trying to con me, and she's using you to do it. Brian stood up, started pacing. I have to leave her. I have to... He stopped. But Jazz. Ma, what about Jazz? If I leave Vanessa, she'll take Jazz. Jazz isn't hers to take, I said. And that's something else we need to talk about. But first, I need to know, are you with me or with her? You, he said immediately. Ma, I'm with you. I've been so stupid, so weak, but I'm with you, I swear. Then here's what we're going to do, I said. You're going to keep pretending. You're going to act like nothing has changed. Can you do that? I don't know if I'm strong enough. Then get strong, I said firmly, because your daughter's future depends on it, because your freedom depends on it, and because it's time you learned what it means to fight for something that matters. Brian nodded, wiping his face. Ma, what about Henderson? Even if we stop Vanessa, I still owe him $500,000. I'm still going to prison. Let me handle Henderson, I said. I have a meeting with him on Monday. Trust me. Why would you help me? He asked quietly. After everything I did to you? I took his face in my hands the way I used to when he was small. Because you're my son, I said. And that means something to me, even if it doesn't mean anything to you. Now go wash your face. Vanessa will be home soon, and you can't let her see you've been crying. As he left, I pulled out my phone and texted Patricia. Meeting with Henderson Monday confirmed? She texted back immediately. 10 a.m. His office. He's bringing his lawyer. I smiled. 3 more days. Then the real game would begin. Saturday and Sunday passed in a blur of preparation. Dorothy came over both days, ostensibly to help me with holiday decorating. Really, we were planning. Patricia worked through the weekend, preparing documents. Ray Cooper, my old foreman from Sterling Gardens, stopped by Sunday afternoon with 4 of his crew. Big men with calloused hands and kind eyes. "Ms. Angela," Ray said, hugging me tight. "Dorothy said you might need some backup soon." "I might," I said. "How do you feel about coming to a party?" "What kind of party?" "The kind where we show some ungrateful people what happens when they mess with the wrong woman." Ray grinned. "Ma'am, we wouldn't miss it for the world." Sunday night I called Reverend James Powell from my church. "Angela," he said warmly, "I've been meaning to check on you. I heard your son came home." "He did," I said. "Along with some complications. Reverend, I need a favor. I need a character witness. Someone who can testify to my mental competence, my judgment, my faith." "When do you need me?" "This week, possibly Thursday, maybe Friday." "I'll clear my schedule," he said. "Angela, whatever you need." Monday morning, as Vanessa and Brian slept and Jazz studied quietly in her room, I sat in my office reviewing everything. The fake bank statement showing $2.8 million. They'd seen it, taken the bait. The real accounts showing $15 million. Hidden, protected. Patricia's background check. Criminal records, warrants, proof of fraud. The pills. Tested, documented, evidence of conspiracy. The security footage. Every conversation, every plan, every lie. And at 10 a.m., I would meet Thomas Henderson, the man my son had stolen from, the man who held Brian's freedom in his hands, the man I needed to convince to give my son one more chance. I looked at the photo on my desk. Marcus and me, 30 years ago, covered in dirt, grinning in front of the first garden we'd ever planted together. "I'm going to fix this, baby," I whispered to the picture. "I'm going to save our son. Watch me." I told Vanessa I had a doctor's appointment. "Do you want me to come with you?" she asked, all concern. No, I said. "Just a routine checkup. I'll be back by noon." I drove to downtown Chicago in my sensible Lexus sedan, not flashy, just reliable, and parked in the garage of the Sullivan Center building on Michigan Avenue. Thomas Henderson's office was on the 47th floor. I took the elevator up, my heart pounding. At exactly 10 a.m., his receptionist led me into a corner office with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Michigan. Thomas Henderson was 62 years old, distinguished, with silver hair and sharp eyes behind expensive glasses. He wore a tailored suit that probably cost $3,000. Everything about him said successful, powerful, not to be trifled with. Next to him sat a woman in her 50s, his lawyer, I assumed. "Ms. Sterling," Henderson said, standing. His voice was deep, careful. "Thank you for coming." "Mr. Henderson," I said, shaking his hand. His grip was firm. "Thank you for seeing me." We sat. "I'll be direct," I said. "I want to buy my son's debt from you." Henderson's eyebrows rose. "Buy it?" "Yes. All of it. $512,750. I'll pay you in full by Friday." "Ms. Sterling," his lawyer said carefully, "this isn't just about money. Your son committed fraud. He stole from 15 families. Mr. Henderson has already bought their claims. Those people deserve justice." "I agree," I said. "They do. But let me ask you something, Mr. Henderson. Will sending my son to prison get your investors their money back?" "No," he admitted. "Will it teach him anything except how to survive in a cage?" "Probably not." "Then let me offer an alternative," I said. I pulled out a folder Patricia had prepared. "I'm reopening Sterling Gardens and Design. New company, new focus, restoration and community gardens. Low-income neighborhoods, schools, parks. I need workers. Good workers who understand what it means to earn something." I slid the proposal across the desk. "Brian will work for me. Minimum wage, 40 hours a week. For 10 years. 40% of his wages will be garnished and paid directly to you, divided among your 15 investors. Full restitution plus 6% interest." Henderson reviewed the numbers. "That's $512,750 plus interest. Total payout of $638,000 over 10 years. "Yes." "And if he quits? Runs?" "I'll pay the remaining balance immediately," I said. "I'll sign a guarantee. If he fails, I pay. But if he succeeds, he learns what work means. He learns discipline. He learns to rebuild what he destroyed." Henderson sat back. Why should I trust you? Because, I said, meeting his eyes, my husband was killed on a job site because someone else cut corners. I spent 16 years fighting for justice. I understand what it means when someone steals your security, your future, your trust. I understand what you're feeling, Mr. Henderson, and I'm not asking you to forgive. I'm asking you to let my son earn his way back. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Henderson said, What about Victoria Castellano? So he knew. Vanessa goes to jail, I said flatly. That's non-negotiable. She orchestrated this. She's the predator. Brian was weak and stupid, but she's the criminal. She faces full consequences. Henderson looked at his lawyer. They had a whispered conversation. Then he looked back at me. I want weekly reports. I want proof he's working. I want copies of every payment. And if he misses 1 week, 1 payment, 1 hour, he won't, I said. The first payment is due January 15th, Henderson said. I'll have my lawyers draw up the paperwork. But Ms. Sterling, your son is getting a chance my father never got. Don't waste it. Your father? I asked quietly. Died working construction, Henderson said. Fell from scaffolding in 1983. Faulty equipment. The company settled out of court for $50,000 and no admission of guilt. My mother raised 4 kids on that money. It was gone in 3 years. Our eyes met. We understood each other. My husband died the same way, I said. 2007. I know your pain, Mr. Henderson, and I promise you, Brian will not waste this chance. We shook hands. I walked out of that office with my son's freedom in my purse. Now I just had to save my granddaughter and destroy Victoria Castellano. As I drove back to Lake Forest, my phone buzzed. A text from Vanessa. Rick Morrison is coming tomorrow at 2 p.m. to review your estate paperwork. Please make sure you're available. We're all looking forward to getting everything organized for you. I smiled. Tomorrow was Tuesday, December 1st. She thought she was closing the trap. She had no idea I'd already built the cage. Rick Morrison arrived at exactly 2 p.m., carrying a leather briefcase that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. He was 53 years old, balding, with the kind of practiced smile that never reached his eyes. He wore a suit that was just expensive enough to be impressive, but not so expensive that he looked successful enough to turn down questionable clients. Ms. Sterling, he said, extending his hand. It's a pleasure. Vanessa has told me so much about you. Has she? I said, not making it a question. We sat in the living room. Me, Rick Morrison, Vanessa, and Brian. Jazz had conveniently been sent to her room. Now, Rick said, pulling documents from his briefcase, I've prepared some standard estate planning documents. Very routine. Just ensuring your assets are protected and your wishes are clear. He spread papers across my coffee table. This first document is a durable power of attorney. It simply allows Brian and Vanessa to help manage your affairs if you become unable to do so. Unable how? I asked. Oh, illness, injury, memory issues, anything that might make it difficult for you to handle complex financial matters. It's just a safety net. I picked up the document, read it carefully. It wasn't a safety net. It was a legal guillotine. Once signed, it would give them complete control over every account, every asset, every decision. And this? I pointed to the second document. Healthcare power of attorney, Rick said smoothly, allows them to make medical decisions if you're incapacitated, which meant they could commit me to a facility and I'd have no legal recourse. This one? I held up the third document. A living trust, Rick said. Transfers your assets into a trust managed by Brian and Vanessa, with you as the beneficiary. Very common for estate planning. Avoids probate, reduces taxes. What he didn't say, once the assets were in the trust, I'd have no control over them. They could drain every account and I'd be powerless to stop them. I set the papers down carefully. Mr. Morrison, I said, these documents essentially give Brian and Vanessa complete control over my money, my property, and my person. Is that correct? He blinked, surprised by my directness. Well, that's a simplification. It's accurate, though, isn't it? The documents are designed to protect you, Vanessa jumped in. Angela, we're only trying to help. You've been forgetting things, the unpaid bills, the confusion about your accounts. What unpaid bills? I asked directly. She faltered. The ones in your office. I told you, I don't have any unpaid bills, Vanessa. I've never had unpaid bills. I've been managing my finances successfully for 40 years. Why would I suddenly need help now? Because you're 63 years old, she said, her voice sharpening. Because you're alone in this big house. Because things slip. It's not an insult, Angela, it's reality. Is it reality? I asked. Or is it convenient? The room went silent. Rick Morrison closed his briefcase. Perhaps we should reconvene when everyone has had time to think. No need, I said, standing. I'm not signing anything. Thank you for your time, Mr. Morrison. Vanessa will show you out. Angela, Vanessa started. I said no. My voice was steel. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have phone calls to make. I walked out, leaving them in my living room. Behind me, I heard Vanessa hiss to Rick. She's being unreasonable. We need a different approach. I smiled. They were getting desperate. Perfect. The next morning, I made an announcement at breakfast. I've been thinking, I said, pouring coffee. I haven't had a proper celebration since I bought this house. I'd like to have a party. A retirement party, officially. This Saturday, December 6th. Vanessa's head snapped up. A party? Yes. I'll invite friends, former business associates, people from my church. Maybe 40 or 50 people. We'll have it catered, make it nice. I want to celebrate this new chapter of my life. That's wonderful, Ma, Brian said carefully. But maybe we should keep it small. Just family. I've had 18 years of just family meaning nobody, I said. I want a celebration, and I want to introduce you all to my community. Let people know my son came home. I saw Vanessa and Brian exchange glances. Actually, Vanessa said slowly, a party could be perfect. A celebration of family reuniting. And maybe at the party you could make an announcement about the future. About how Brian's going to help manage things. Very public, very official, so everyone knows you're being taken care of. There it was. She wanted witnesses to me signing over my life. What a lovely idea, I said. Yes, let's do that. I'll have Patricia draw up some paperwork to review at the party. Vanessa's eyes gleamed. Your lawyer will be there? Of course. All official documents should be reviewed by lawyers, don't you think? Absolutely, she said, relaxing. This is perfect, Angela. Just perfect. That afternoon I called my people, Patricia first. Get the documents ready, all of them. Background checks, criminal records, evidence of fraud, the pills, everything. I want it organized, professional, and devastating. Dorothy next. Call everyone. Ray and his crew, Reverend Powell, people from the church, my old clients, everyone who knows me. Tell them Saturday, 6 p.m., formal attire. Nicole Brooks, the social worker, third. I need you there Saturday, and I need emergency custody papers for Jazz ready to sign. Thomas Henderson last. Mr. Henderson, I'm having a small gathering Saturday evening. I'd be honored if you'd attend. I think you'll find it educational. By Wednesday night, everything was arranged. 53 guests confirmed. Caterers hired. A podium set up in the ballroom with a microphone and projection screen. The stage was set. Friday afternoon, Ray Cooper and his crew arrived to help set up. 6 big men in work boots and Carhartt jackets, carrying folding chairs and sound equipment. They smelled like diesel fuel and honest work. Vanessa met them at the door, her nose wrinkling. Are you the caterers? No, ma'am, Ray said politely. We're the setup crew. Ms. Angela asked us to help with chairs and such. Oh, Vanessa said, looking them up and down with barely disguised contempt. Well, the entrance for workers is around back. Please use that from now on. Ray looked at me. I shook my head slightly. Yes, ma'am, he said. Around back. Understood. After Vanessa walked away, Ray muttered, That woman needs a lesson in manners. She's about to get one, I promised. That evening I sat with Jazz in her room. Tomorrow night, I said, things are going to happen. Surprising things. Possibly scary things. I need you to trust me. Can you do that? Jazz nodded. Grandma, what's going to happen? Justice, I said, and freedom, for both of us. Saturday, December 6th. By 5 p.m., my house was transformed. The ballroom, which I'd barely used since buying the house, was set with round tables covered in white linens. Crystal glasses caught the light from the chandeliers. A stage at the front held a podium and a large projection screen. Caterers moved efficiently through the space, setting up food stations with salmon, prime rib, and vegetables that actually looked appealing. A string quartet played softly in the corner. It looked like a wedding or a funeral, depending on your perspective. At 5:30, I dressed carefully. A navy blue dress, elegant, expensive, but not flashy. Pearl earrings Marcus had given me for our 20th anniversary. Comfortable heels. I looked at myself in the mirror, 63 years old. Gray in my hair that I'd stopped dyeing. Lines around my eyes from years in the sun. I looked like someone's grandmother, someone's victim. Perfect. Guests began arriving at 6 o'clock. Dorothy came first, dressed in a purple suit that made her look like royalty. She hugged me tight. "You ready for this?" "I was born ready," I said. Reverend Powell arrived with his wife. Ray and his crew came in through the front door this time, wearing clean jeans and button-down shirts. They still looked out of place among the cocktail dresses and suits, but they didn't care. Thomas Henderson arrived at 6:15 with his wife, an elegant woman in her 60s wearing diamonds that were definitely real. Patricia Valdez came at 6:20, carrying a briefcase. By 6:30, the ballroom was full. 53 people. Some knew why they were there. Most didn't. Vanessa worked the room like a politician's wife, introducing herself, laughing at jokes, playing the devoted daughter-in-law. She'd worn a cream-colored dress that probably cost $1,200 and heels high enough to be weapons. Brian looked uncomfortable in his suit, staying near the bar, drinking too much too fast. Jazz sat at a back table, watching everything with wide eyes. At 7 o'clock, dinner was served. Small talk, laughter, the comfortable noise of people eating good food. At 7:45, I stood and walked to the podium. The string quartet stopped playing. Conversations faded. All eyes turned to me. "Thank you all for coming," I said, my voice amplified by the microphone. "Many of you know me as Angela Sterling, owner of Sterling Gardens and Design. Some of you know me as a widow, a mother, a friend. Tonight, I want to share something important with all of you." Vanessa was smiling, sitting at the front table with Brian, ready for her moment of triumph. "As you know," I continued, "I recently sold my business and retired to this beautiful home. It's been a time of reflection for me, a time to think about legacy, about family, about what matters." I paused. 3 weeks ago, my son Brian came back into my life after 18 years. With him came my daughter-in-law Vanessa and my granddaughter Jazz. Polite applause. Vanessa beamed. "They told me they needed family. They told me they wanted reconciliation. And I believed them, because I'm a mother, and mothers want to believe the best about their children." Vanessa's smile faltered slightly. "But over the past 3 weeks," I said, my voice hardening, "I've learned something important. I've learned that belief without verification is just naivety." I nodded to Patricia. She pressed a button on her laptop. The projection screen behind me lit up. Document 1, birth certificate, name, Victoria Ann Castellano, born March 15th, 1987. Gasps rippled through the room. "My daughter-in-law's name isn't Vanessa Reynolds," I said calmly. "It's Victoria Castellano. She legally changed it in 2018 after being released from Bedford Hills Correctional Facility." Vanessa stood up. "What are you... this is..." "Sit down, Victoria," I said. Document 2, criminal record case number 2015-CR-008764. Defendant, Victoria Ann Castellano. Conviction, embezzlement, wire fraud. Sentence, 3 years, served 18 months. The room was dead silent now. Victoria was convicted of embezzling $287,450 from her father's company, I continued. She served time, and when she was released, she found my son, a grieving, vulnerable man, and she saw an opportunity. Document 3, fraud investigations. 2 cases, names, dates, amounts. $75,000 from an elderly widow, $34,000 from a retired professor. She has a pattern, I said. She targets vulnerable people. She gains their trust. She steals their money. Vanessa was shaking. "You can't prove. These documents are fake." "They're not fake," Patricia said, standing. "I'm Patricia Valdez, Ms. Sterling's attorney. Every document here is certified by the state of Illinois and the state of New York. Every word is true." Document 4, bank statements, Brian's accounts, 15 investors, $1,847,000 lost. Thomas Henderson's name highlighted, $425,000. My son, I said, my voice breaking slightly, made terrible mistakes. He gambled away money that didn't belong to him. He hurt people who trusted him, and he was too ashamed to ask for help. I looked at Brian. He was crying silently. But Victoria didn't try to help him, I continued. She saw my son's desperation and decided to use it. To use him. To come here and steal from me. Document 5. The pills. A photo of the prescription bottle, followed by the lab analysis. She planted pills in my medicine cabinet, I said. Pills that weren't prescribed by any doctor I've ever seen. Pills that, if taken regularly, would cause genuine cognitive impairment. She was trying to make me incompetent so she could steal my assets legally. The crowd murmured, angry now. Document 6. Security footage transcript. I didn't play the video. I didn't need to humiliate them that thoroughly. But I showed the transcript. Vanessa Reynolds, November 23rd, 11:47 p.m. She's loaded. We establish she needs help. We get power of attorney. We liquidate what we can. We get the money, pay Henderson, get out. Vanessa screamed. You were spying on us? In your own house? That's illegal. Actually, Patricia said calmly, it's completely legal. Security cameras in common areas of one's own home. No expectation of privacy in a living room or kitchen. I looked at Vanessa directly. You came into my home planning to rob me. You tried to drug me. You manipulated my son. And worst of all, you abused my granddaughter. Jazz was crying now. Nicole Brooks, the social worker, sat next to her, holding her hand. I spoke with Jazz, I said. I learned about the emotional abuse, the manipulation, the fear, and I decided, enough. I pulled out the final document. Victoria Ann Castellano, I said formally, also known as Vanessa Reynolds, you have 72 hours to vacate my property. I have filed a restraining order. You are not to contact me, my son, or my granddaughter ever again. 2 police officers stepped forward from where they'd been waiting by the door. Additionally, I said, you are under arrest for fraud, attempted elder abuse, conspiracy to commit theft, and distribution of controlled substances without a prescription. The officers moved toward Vanessa. She backed away, wild-eyed. You can't do this, she screamed. Brian, tell her, we're married, you can't just... Actually, I can, Brian said quietly. He stood up, walked to the podium, and stood next to me. I already filed for divorce, Vanessa, this morning, on grounds of fraud and deception. Vanessa stared at him like he'd slapped her. You're weak, she spat. You're pathetic. Without me, you're nothing. Without you, Brian said, I have a chance to be someone worth being. The officers handcuffed her. As they led her away, she screamed threats, curses, promises of lawsuits that would never materialize. The ballroom doors closed behind her. The silence was deafening. I stood at the podium, gripping it for support. The room was still processing what they'd witnessed. Before we finish, I said quietly, I need to say something to my son, something I should have said 18 years ago. I looked at Brian. Baby, your father's death was not my fault. I nodded to Patricia. She brought up the final documents. November 15th, 2007. Marcus Sterling died when scaffolding collapsed at the Riverside Shopping Center project. For 18 years, you thought I was responsible, that I'd cut corners or pushed too hard or cared more about money than safety. Document. Investigation report. OSHA. The investigation proved otherwise, I said. The scaffolding failed because Riverside Materials sold us defective rebar with falsified safety certificates. I had hired certified engineers. I had followed every regulation. The suppliers lied, Brian. They chose profit over safety. And your father paid the price. Document. Criminal conviction. Riverside Materials was convicted of negligent homicide. Their CEO served 3 years in federal prison, and I spent 16 years fighting for justice. Not for money, for truth, for your father's name, for his legacy. Tears were streaming down my face now. I didn't choose work over family, baby. I worked to save our family. After your father died, we had nothing. No insurance, crushing debt, bills piling up. I worked 70 hours a week to keep you in school, to keep us alive. Document. Tuition records, receipts, canceled checks. I sold my mother's house to pay your college tuition. I co-signed your apartment lease. I gave you $30,000 for your wedding to a woman who was already planning to destroy you. My voice broke. And when you left, when you blamed me and walked away, I kept working. Because that's what mothers do. We carry the weight. We shoulder the blame. We sacrifice everything and call it love. Brian walked to the stage. He climbed the stairs. He stood in front of me. Ma, he whispered, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For all of it. For believing her. For abandoning you. For wasting 18 years. I'm sorry. He fell to his knees in front of 53 witnesses and sobbed. I knelt down and held my son while he cried. Held him the way I couldn't hold him at his father's funeral. Held him the way I'd wanted to hold him for 18 years. You're home now, I whispered. You're home, and we're going to fix this, together. After the guests left, after the hugs and tears and promises to stay in touch, we gathered in my living room. Me, Brian, Jazz, Dorothy, Patricia, Nicole Brooks, Thomas Henderson, Reverend Powell, and Ray. So what happens now? Brian asked. Patricia laid out the plan. Vanessa will be formally charged Monday morning. With her record and the evidence, she's looking at 5 to 7 years. The DA is very interested in the pill scheme. That's a serious felony. And Brian? I asked, even though I knew. Mr. Henderson and I have reached an agreement, Patricia said. Brian will work for Sterling Gardens, which you're reopening. Minimum wage, 40 hours a week for 10 years. 40% of his wages go to repaying the investors. Total restitution, $638,000. Brian nodded slowly. I'll do it, whatever it takes. You'll start Monday, Ray said. 6 a.m. Bring work boots and a lunch. We're landscaping the South Side Community Center. It's cold, it's hard, and nobody's going to treat you special. Good, Brian said. I don't deserve special. Nicole Brooks cleared her throat. I have the emergency custody paperwork. Angela, if you're still willing... I am, I said immediately. She laid the documents on the coffee table. Brian, as Jazz's biological father, you have to consent to temporary custody transfer. Given the circumstances, Vanessa's arrest, your financial situation, the criminal charges, it's the best option for Jazz's safety. Brian looked at his daughter. She was curled up in an armchair, watching him with those big brown eyes. Jazz, he said softly, I have been the worst father. I chose the wrong woman. I made the wrong choices. I put you in danger. And I'm sorry, baby. I'm so sorry. Are you going to get better, Dad? Jazz asked quietly. I'm going to try, he said. It's going to take time. It's going to be hard, but your grandma is giving me a chance to make things right, and I'm going to take it. He signed the papers. I signed the papers. Nicole Brooks witnessed and notarized. Just like that, Jazz was mine. 6 months later, May 2026, I woke up at 6 a.m. to sunlight streaming through my bedroom windows. The house was quiet, but not empty. Jazz was still asleep upstairs. Brian was in the small apartment we'd converted above the garage, close but independent. I made coffee and walked onto the balcony overlooking the lake. 6 months. Victoria Castellano had pleaded guilty to avoid trial. She was serving 6 years at Logan Correctional Center. Brian had worked every single day since December 8th. Ray told me he was the first one on the site and the last to leave. His hands were calloused now. His back hurt. He'd lost 30 pounds. He looked tired but clean. Sober. Real. The first payment to Henderson's investors had gone out January 15th, $1,247.82. On time, in full. Jazz was thriving. She'd enrolled at Lake Forest High School. She'd made friends. She was seeing a therapist twice a week, working through the trauma. She smiled now. Really smiled. Last week she'd asked if she could plant a garden in the backyard. What kind of garden? I'd asked. Sunflowers, she'd said, because they always face the light. So we'd spent last Saturday planting. Me, Jazz, and Brian. 3 generations in the dirt, building something new. This morning my phone buzzed, a text from Brian. Morning, Ma. Heading to the site. Love you. 3 words I hadn't heard in 18 years. I texted back. Love you too, baby. Be safe. At 8 a.m., Jazz came down for breakfast. She'd grown 2 inches since December. Her face had filled out. She looked healthy. "Morning, Grandma," she said, kissing my cheek. "Morning, sweetheart. Sleep well?" "Really well," she said. "I had a dream about Grandpa Marcus. You were showing me pictures yesterday, and I dreamed I met him. He said to tell you he's proud of you." My eyes filled with tears. "Yeah? Yeah," she said. "He said you saved us. All of us." On Sunday, May 18th, 2026, we held the grand opening of Sterling Community Gardens. 12 vacant lots on Chicago's South Side, transformed into vegetable gardens, flower beds, and green spaces. Funded by the Sterling Foundation, which I'd established with $2 million of my own money. Ray managed the operations. Brian led one of the work crews. Jazz volunteered every Saturday, teaching kids how to plant tomatoes and zucchini. At the ribbon-cutting ceremony, I stood at the microphone surrounded by community members, city council representatives, and the press. "People ask me why I'm doing this at 63 years old," I said. "Why start over? Why not just enjoy retirement?" I looked at Brian, working with a group of teenagers to plant a row of sunflowers. At Jazz, laughing with a little girl covered in dirt. At Dorothy and Ray and Patricia and all the people who'd stood by me. "Because gardens aren't just about beauty," I said. "They're about legacy. They're about taking broken ground and making it fertile. They're about second chances and deep roots and the belief that anything can bloom if you give it time, attention, and love." I looked directly at the camera recording the event. "I'm Angela Marie Sterling. I'm 63 years old. For 18 years, I was alone. For 3 weeks, I was under attack. And for 6 months, I've been rebuilding my family from the ground up. People see a 63-year-old black woman and they think vulnerable, easy target, past her prime. They thought they could steal from me, drug me, manipulate me. They thought age made me weak." I smiled. "They were wrong. Age made me patient. It made me strategic. It made me dangerous." To anyone listening who's been underestimated, dismissed, or counted out, don't get angry. Get smart. Document everything. Trust yourself, and remember that the quietest victories are often the sweetest. I looked at Jazz. She was watching me with pride in her eyes. "The greatest victory wasn't destroying my enemies," I said. "It was saving my family. And that's a victory worth fighting for." That evening, I stood in the backyard of my Lake Forest home. The sunflowers Jazz and I had planted were starting to sprout, tiny green shoots pushing through the dark soil. Jazz came out and stood next to me, slipping her hand into mine. "Grandma," she said, "thank you for saving me." "Baby," I said, squeezing her hand, "you saved me first. You were brave enough to tell me the truth. You trusted me when you had no reason to trust anyone. You're the real hero of this story." "We're both heroes," she said. "Yeah," I agreed. "Yeah, we are." Brian joined us, smelling like sweat and grass clippings, looking more like his father than he ever had before. "The sunflowers are growing," he observed. "They are," I said. "Dad," Jazz said, "tell me about Grandpa Marcus, about when he and Grandma first started the business." Brian looked at me. I nodded. "Your grandfather," Brian began, "was the hardest working man I ever knew, and your grandmother was the strongest woman. Together, they built something beautiful from nothing. And now we're doing it again." We stood there as the sun set, 3 generations healing together. I thought about Marcus, about the garden we'd planted 40 years ago that still bloomed by the lake, about legacy and loss and the long, hard road back to family. "At 63, I said quietly, "I learned that family isn't about blood. It's about showing up. It's about truth. It's about second chances and hard work and believing that even the most damaged soil can grow something beautiful." I looked at my son, flawed, broken, but trying. At my granddaughter, traumatized, healing, but strong. "The greatest gardens," I said, "are the ones we plant in the ruins." Jazz leaned her head on my shoulder. "I love you, Grandma." "I love you too, baby," I said. "Welcome home." The sunflowers grew, the family healed, and the house on Lakeshore Drive, once empty and echoing, filled with life. Not the life I'd planned, but the life I'd fought for, and that made all the difference.